بنترككم الآن في رحلة عن روح ريادة الأعمال مع شخص يعني بذل جهده عشان يظهر شخصية باتمان بالكاركتر اللي نعرفها اليوم.
رحبوا معاي جمهورنا الكريم وبتحية كبيرة بمايكل اوسلان المنشئ والمنتج التنفيذي لأفلام باتمان. نتمنى لكم وقت ممتع.
Thank you so much. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Good evening. Hi. So, thank you. I have a question. What do you do when you're burning with a passion? I mean burning with a passion, you can feel it coursing through your veins. I think that everybody who's here tonight has got to be an entrepreneur. And the key to the entrepreneurial spirit is simply that, it's passion. It's passion that ignites the entrepreneurial spirit. It's passion that empowers you to become a storyteller. Because only when you're in a situation in the world of motion pictures and television and streaming and animation that your projects will come to fruition because of the passion you exude, the enthusiasm that you have for your project through the storytelling that you do. I learned my first lesson in life about passion from my dad. My father was a stonemason. He had to drop out of school when he was a teenager to go to work and support his family during the Great Depression. My father worked 6 days a week his entire life, but he loved what he did. What he was able to make out of brick and stone and cement, beautiful fireplaces and homes, he took pride in that as an old world artist, as a craftsman. And as a child growing up in a house like that, where you see a father getting up every day, 6 days a week, with a big smile on his face, and he can't wait to get to work. How can you not want that for yourself? How can you not want to wake up on a rainy Monday morning and say, boy, I can't wait to get to work? But it's not easy to take your passion and turn it into your work. It's something that could be very long and hard to accomplish. It all starts with the magic of one thing: getting up off the couch. If you get up off the couch and are proactive about making your dreams come true, you can make your dreams come true. As I've lectured around the world at universities and comic book conventions, I've met a lot of young people. And while I hate to generalize, I would say that probably today, 15% are willing to sacrifice any sense of entitlement they may misguidedly have and get up off the couch and be proactive to make their dreams come true, to discover their passion and then follow it. But passion comes with other things: commitment and perseverance. Commitment and perseverance. Two things that I learned from my mom about what it takes. And when you make a commitment to your passion in life, to making your dreams come true, nobody is going to say, oh, it's going to be very quick. Oh, it's going to be very easy. Because with the concept of commitment often comes pain. Batman took 10 years to bring to the motion picture screen from the day I bought the rights from DC Comics. 10 years. And I speak now not simply as a filmmaker, not simply as a producer, not simply as somebody who creatively builds global branded franchises, but I speak to you as a comic book geek, as a comic book fan. That's who I was growing up. By the time I graduated from high school, I had over 30,000 comic books. It filled my parents' garage. My father never once was able to get a car into the garage. I went to the very first comic book convention ever held on the planet Earth. 200 of us showed up at the first Comic-Con, as opposed to these days where you'll get 100,000 or 200,000 to a big comic book convention. It was a different era and a different time, but I loved my superheroes. I loved Spider-Man and Superman. I loved the Hulk and Wonder Woman, all of these great characters. And I wondered, how could I take this love that I have and convert it into my work? Well, my first opportunity came when I went to college. I went to Indiana University in the United States. It was the early 1970s, and they had just started something a little bit different. It was an experimental curriculum department. And they said, if you have an idea for a college course that's never been taught before and could get the backing of a department on campus, you would then, even as an undergrad, I was only 20 years old, you would then have the right to appear before a panel of deans and professors and pitch your course. And so I said, nobody has ever done a college course on comic book superheroes. So I went to the folklore department and got my folklore professor to listen to me. I told him the ancient gods of Greece, Rome, Egypt, they all still exist today. But now they wear spandex and capes. Case in point, the Greeks called him Neptune, the Romans called him Poseidon, but I call him Aquaman. The Greeks called him Hermes, the Romans call him Mercury, I call him the Flash. And the professor said, Michael, you're right. The ancient concept of folklore tales still live on in comic books today, and it does not matter if we call them King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table or if we call them the Avengers. It's all the same, and I will back you. I wound up teaching the world's first college-accredited course on comic books. There was a lot of publicity about it. I never taught a class that wasn't filled with cameras from television stations around the world and reporters. And I was invited on radio talk shows and TV talk shows. 2 weeks later, my telephone rings. It is this exuberant male voice. Hi, is this Mike Ouslan? I said, yeah. He said, Mike, hi, this is Stan Lee from Marvel Comics in New York City. This was a life-changing moment for me. Stan Lee, for those of you who do not know, was the co-creator of the entire pantheon of Marvel superheroes. Spider-Man, the Avengers, Thor, the Hulk, Ant-Man, so many of them. He said, Mike, what you're doing is great for the whole comic book industry. How can I help you? 2 hours later, I got the same phone call from the president of DC Comics, the publishers of Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. And they said, we've been listening to you on the TV. We've been reading about you in newspapers. We think you are a very innovative young man. We would like to fly you to New York City and discuss ways that we could work together. Dream come true for an old-time comic book fan. I began working summers at DC Comics. I began writing. I was still in college. I began writing Batman comic books. They got to know me. I got to show them how much I loved these characters, how passionate I was about Batman specifically. Batman. He was different than all the other superheroes because all the other superheroes had superpowers. Batman was human. Batman's greatest superpower is his humanity. And I could so identify with that. And in my heart of hearts, when I was a kid, I believed that if I studied very hard and worked out really hard, And if my dad bought me a cool car, I could be this guy. What an inspiration that Batman was for me. He had the coolest car in the world. He had the greatest rogues gallery of supervillains in all of the world of comic books. And he had a primal origin story of a young boy who sees his parents gunned down in front of his eyes on the streets of Gotham City. And from that moment, he sacrifices his childhood and he makes a vow. His vow is that he's going to get the bad guy who did this. He's going to get all the bad guys, even if he has to walk through hell the rest of his life in order to do it. Interesting. Commitment, perseverance. In doing that, Batman became an urban legend, an urban warrior. He became the Dark Knight. I so identified with that. And then I decided it was time to make a dream and to get started on making a dream come true, born out of my passion. I had seen the old Batman TV series when it first debuted in the 1960s. And in that TV series, Batman was treated as a comedy. Everybody was laughing at Batman. Batman was a joke. And as a comic book fan, as somebody who was a true Batman fan, I was horrified. Horrified that they were making a joke out of my Batman. And I made a vow. I made a vow that night in the basement den of our house in New Jersey. I said, somehow, someday, I am going to show the world the true Batman, the creature of the night who stalks, thank you, the creature of the night who stalks villains from the shadows, deeply disturbed villains. And I will find a way to remove from the collective consciousness of the world culture these three new words, pow, zap, and wham. That was my vow. Just like young Bruce Wayne had made a vow. Except he made his vow over the bloody bodies of his parents in the street. My parents were safe upstairs in the kitchen. But that was it for me. So the day came. I was still in my 20s, when I went out to friends, family, business associates, lawyers, doctors, dentists, anyone who would hear me. And I privately raised money and then went back to the president of DC Comics. I said, I want to buy the rights to Batman. I want to start making dark and serious Batman movies that will show the world the true Batman and not the funny guy that they know from the 60s. The president of DC Comics was horrified. He really was almost like a second father to me. Very, very nice man. He said, Michael, for God's sake, don't do this. Don't you understand that when Batman went off the air on television, the brand became as dead as a dodo? He said, Michael, nobody's interested in Batman anymore. I said, yeah, but nobody's ever seen a dark and serious comic book superhero movie before. This is going to be like a new form of entertainment. And he shook his head and said, is there any way I can talk you out of this? And I said, no. He said, all right, come on in. That began a 6-month negotiation. And on October 3rd, 1979, we signed the contract, paid the money. I got the rights to Batman, put it in my back pocket, and flew out to this strange world of California where I knew nobody. I had no relatives in the business. I had no friends in the business. But I thought that every major movie studio, every production company would line up at my doorstep. How could they not? This was going to be a slam dunk. How could they not see the potential for sequels, animation, games, toys. It's going to be easy. I was turned down by every single studio in Hollywood. I was told this was the worst idea they ever heard. Michael, you're crazy. You cannot do serious comic book movies. Michael, you're nuts. You cannot do dark superheroes. Michael, you're out of your mind. You can't take an old TV series and turn it into a movie. Nobody's ever done that before. As a result, from that moment I bought the rights till we finally got that first movie out, 10 years. That's a long time. Think about where you were 10 years ago. That is a long time. So what do? What do you do to hang on by your fingertips to survive this human endurance contest of taking your personal project, your dream, your passion, and making it come true? What do you do when everyone is telling you it's a terrible idea? Don't do it. You have to look deep inside your soul. This tests your mettle as a human being. And I had to deal with this question. Is everybody right and I'm just being stubborn? Or do I really, truly believe in this and in myself? And I kept coming up with the latter answer. To survive that for 10 years, when I had an obligation to put a roof over my family's house, to put food on the table, luckily I had a completely supportive wife, parents, family, and friends behind me, because I don't know any other way to make these kind of dreams come true. Then the day came. The day came, it was 7 years into the process, when a young genius by the name of Tim Burton came into our lives. Tim Burton, a former Disney animator who came in with the big idea. I always call it the big idea. He said to me, Michael, if we are going to do the first ever comic book superhero as a movie and want it to be taken totally seriously, this movie cannot be about Batman. I was in shock. I go, what do you mean it can't be about Batman? It's a Batman movie. He said, no. This movie must be about Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne. We have to show a Bruce Wayne so driven, so obsessed to the point of being psychotic that audiences will suspend their disbelief and say, oh yeah, that guy would get dressed up as a bat and go out and fight guys who look like the Joker. He said, otherwise, we'll get unintentional laughs from the audience and it won't work. That was the big idea. That was the idea that would change Hollywood forever. That was the idea that would open the door to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Think about it for a second. If you've ever seen an Iron Man movie, I think you'll agree with me that in truth, they should be entitled Tony Stark. If you've ever seen a Spider-Man movie, I think you'll agree with me, they should be entitled Peter Parker. There was a corollary to Tim Burton's big idea. He said, world building. From the opening scene of this first Batman movie, we have to make Gotham City the third most important character in this film. Because if right from the first frames, the audience does not believe in Gotham City, they will not then be able to believe in a guy dressed as Batman fighting a guy who looks like the Joker. And that revolutionized Hollywood. That changed the world's perception of comic books and superheroes. Everything changed. A few years later, another genius walks in the door by the name of Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan's job was to restore the darkness and dignity to Batman on screen. He wanted to do what Tim Burton had done, but he was going to come at it 180 degrees differently. Instead of doing what Tim did, Tim built Gotham City, 5 square city blocks of it on the back lot of Pinewood Studios outside London. Instead, Christopher Nolan wanted to do this as realistically as possible. The world had changed. This was no longer a black and white world of good versus evil. This was no longer a world in the comic books of the Joker as the clown prince of crime. The world had gone gray. We were living in a post-9/11 world of order versus chaos. The Joker was now a homicidal maniac. So how did Christopher Nolan respond? What was his challenges? They were amazing. Number one, to make you as an audience believe in Gotham City. And the way he did it, he chose Chicago, Illinois, to be the set. Because he knew that if he took a couple of iconic buildings out of the skyline of Chicago, most people around the world could not recognize the city. As opposed to choosing New York City, and the second you see the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building or Times Square, you go, oh, it's New York, and it breaks the suspension of disbelief. Challenge number 2. How does he convince you that Bruce Wayne could be real? How can he convince you that this is a real young man with post-traumatic stress syndrome on a journey like out of Lost Horizon, a journey of self-discovery? Well, with Christian Bale, they crafted a performance that made us all believe in Bruce Wayne. Next challenge. How could he make you actually believe in the Joker? That the Joker could be real. He turned him into a modern-day terrorist, someone who places no value on human life whatsoever. And in an amazing performance of a lifetime by Heath Ledger, that is worth applause. They brought the Joker to life, and he was scary, and he was real. And then the biggest challenge that Christopher Nolan faced, how does he convince you all that all the gadgets, all the tech could possibly be real? He hired Morgan Freeman to tell you it was real. And if Morgan Freeman said things were true, by God, things were true. And so the Batman franchise has grown. And with each new filmmaker comes a new vision. With each new vision comes a rebranding of Batman. And that should be a reflection for everyone here who's an entrepreneur. Because we all must make ourselves into Batman. Periodically, we must acknowledge that our business is changing. Our industry is changing. Technology is changing. And if we don't adapt, if we don't push ourselves out of our comfort zones, which is very difficult to do, and adapt, we will quickly become irrelevant in our own business. So it's critically important that we rebrand ourselves from time to time the way Batman has done. The Batman story continues. We recently had an incredible portrayal of Batman by another genius, Matt Reeves, in the movie The Batman, showing a very young Bruce Wayne, relatively just starting out, still unsure of himself, tripping over his own feet, still getting hurt, trying to figure it out, trying to grow into what one day will be the legend of the Dark Knight. Another cinematic genius named Todd Phillips comes along with a vision of doing the Joker in a completely different, intense way. And when he directed the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, he did what I think cinema does at its best, which is hold a mirror up to our society. forcing us to look at ourselves in a mirror, warts and all, prejudices, biases. And he showed us that in America, and too often around the world, people have lost their civility. They're no longer talking with each other, they're talking at each other. The country and the world is becoming polarized. People are not paying attention to mental health issues. And mental health is attached to gun violence. And he sent out a loud and clear message about that in what was a movie that completely reinvented what a comic book movie could be. Joker 2 is now in production with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. And once again, it will turn the world on its head and explore new ground. So in summary, my journey maybe represents your journey. My dreams maybe represent your dreams. My passions probably sound familiar to your passions. So again, what do we have to do? We have to explore our passions, and we have to support our passions, even when it's painful, even if it's requiring some degree of economic suffering in the process. Commitment, perseverance. You must have a high threshold for frustration. It's the only way that we can get through what is a very, very difficult challenge in the world of making movies, TV, animation, and whatever is coming next. Always with the understanding that no matter how the technology changes, no matter what they throw at us as people who are creative, as people who want to be storytellers, content is always king. And I end by imploring you, you have stories to tell. In the United States, we have about 250 years of stories to tell. Here, you have thousands of years of stories to tell from your history, from your culture, from your mythology. America has inundated the world with its superheroes, who, as I said, come all out of Greek, Roman, Egyptian mythology, with a new spin on it, modernized. We need your superheroes from your cultures. We need content that is not simply designed for young boys who play video games. We need culturally sensitive content featuring great stories and great characters that will appeal to all of us, that will inspire all of us. Let this be our mutual mission. Let's join hands and let's create entertaining but inspiring content together. And if we each do that, we each become a real-life superhero. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.